This is Playing Pretend, your creative bestie's favorite podcast, with me, Catherine Rossler. Hello, everyone. So this week, I want to chat about a couple things. One, I want to talk about my sobriety and art, and I'm also just going to give updates on my life and this podcast and my creativity at the moment. So the last two episodes, I tried to do some more research, and it was a lot heavily trying to weave these ideas together beforehand, because I was sometimes in my episodes it's almost like what's the point? Do they need to be more structured, like some of the video essays or the other podcasts that I listen to? But I also personally have always really liked the personal journal style, and I think that's kind of where I thrive. So like I've said before, this is an experiment. I'm figuring it out as I go. The last two episodes were also so painful to edit and to piece together because my ideas were a bit all over the place, and it was honestly a nightmare. So I don't want to do that again. That really took the fun out of what this is for me. And I think what this is for me is speaking into the microphone and just letting my ideas and the thoughts flow through me, instead of having something so a bit more choreographed before, even though maybe the script wasn't written out, but there was more of a guide. So now I do really like having these more broad ideas to speak to. I think episode 6 is where I really thrived with that. And yeah, it takes a lot of time. Shout out to everybody that has a podcast and does weekly podcasts, because it's actually so much work and effort that goes into it, and you don't realize until you start doing it yourself. And I'm figuring out what I like about it and what I don't like about it, how I can make this work for me so I can show up weekly. And maybe after a while I'll change it to bi-weekly, or I'll do something different, but this is kind of what I want to try at the moment, and hopefully I'll just get better and better at it. That way I can post episodes and not feel too stressed about them. So I wanted to give a little update on my health, particularly around long COVID and how things have been going. I'm going on longer walks every morning, which honestly is amazing. I could barely get out of bed a few months ago, and at the worst of it, going on a walk like I did every day would make me feel awfully sick, and it would be awful. And I really didn't like it, but I'm really proud of myself at how far I've come. I attribute a lot of it to taking a bit of a step outside of completely being in the chronic illness world, because I find sometimes that it can be really gloom and doom. For example, I listened to the Ologies podcast about long COVID, and on one side it was really awesome and I felt seen, but on the other side it also can be very depressing to listen to, and I personally feel that almost exacerbates my symptoms and puts me into a more negative mindset. Whereas with the M on the Brain community that I'm a part of, and just focusing on for example, when I go on my walks every morning, I always listen to affirmations. And so that's been really, really positive and helpful for my mental health. And I have seen the difference. I am able to go on 20-minute walks now, probably more. I don't actually know how long they are, but I keep extending the distance that I'm going. I'm just walking on the back streets around my house, and I'll just add on another street every week. And it's just been feeling so amazing to really start to be more physically active. And this is coming from somebody who's been an athlete all their lives. Right before this, there was a time period when I was dancing 5-6 days a week. And now I can look back at it with a different perspective. I think sometimes I was doing it out of this necessity that I needed to prove something to myself, but to others that I can do this and I'm a high achieving athlete. And now I'm really, my view on physical activity and mental health and everything is changing so much. It's really hard to articulate exactly where I am now. But I guess that kind of loops into the topic I want to talk about today, which is sobriety. So because it's so deeply intertwined with our mental health and our physical health. It all is so deeply intertwined. So I first started kind of exploring this idea, honestly, like the end of high school. So the TLDR, too long didn't read. The long story short is in like when I was like 14, I started like drinking and smoking weed, and I did that really regularly for about 10 years till I was about 23, I think. And I drank way too much. And I would definitely say like in the beginning and even towards the end, like there were still fun moments that I had, but I started to see how intertwined this was with a lot of the issues that I had with my own self-confidence, my own mental health, relationships. I see it was in a form of escapism. And over the last, I'm 32 now, so over this last, so to speak, decade, I think is when I've really decided to make change. And change is really difficult. When I look back at who I was then and who I am now, I'm a completely different person. And who I thought I was or who I was meant to be has also changed. Like so many ideas about myself and the world have changed over time. There was, at my lowest moments, I had a lot of suicidal ideation. I was wake up with extreme anxiety. I had so much depression, and it was just insane the amount of like how poor my mental health was and how I dealt with that on a daily basis. And I'm so proud of myself for getting through that and seeing that I needed to change and then making those changes accordingly. So if you're going through this right now, like I see you and I hear you, and it's really difficult on so many different levels. It's still challenging for me today in different ways. I don't really prefer not to be around it as often. There was a time period where I would be around people drinking or doing substances more, and now I just really don't want to have anything much to do with it. It doesn't really bring me joy in any way, and it's something that will probably grow and evolve and change over time. So it wasn't until recently I started like rereading some of my journals from high school, and I was noticing that I knew I had an issue with it when I was in high school, but I didn't really start trying to change it until towards the end of university in like my 4th and 5th year. I knew that I had a problem. I knew people around me also had issues. My boyfriend that I had at the time, that's all we did together. And it was just a very, very unhealthy relationship. And I think it was due to the shared substance use that we had. And then in university, I was like, okay, I need to stop doing this. And, getting sober is really difficult. It's a decision you have to make over and over and over again. The more I've learned about how the neuroplasticity in our brains work is our brains don't want us to change. They want us to stay in what is familiar. So stepping outside of what feels really weird and awkward. I remember when I would first start getting sober, and I've said this before, it'd be like I could get a week and then I'd fall back into my old habits. But also like my mindset, like I would be like, I need to change, and then I would fall back. And it was like this constant change, like try and change and fall back. And it went on for years, and I've still experienced it in different ways. So the book that I'm reading now called Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody, the author, it's basically the memoir biography of a therapist, and she talks about different patients that she's seen, and then she will talk about what she's thinking about, and then also talk about like the therapeutic processes or ideas that are behind everything. It's really interesting. And actually, I literally just read this last night, but she talked about like the theory of change, and there's like pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, and I forget what the others are. However, I can see now looking back how it is just a constant ebb and flow. It's not a linear straight line, although maybe some people that happens where they can just quit cold turkey once and that's it. I know I had a lot of back and forth. I think the longest I got at first was like 5 or 8 months. And then I had a really like a big relapse, and then I got past that, and I think it was like another couple years. And then more recently, what I've been trying to unpack and understand is like, what does it mean to be sober, and like, can I call myself sober? I don't even really know exactly my my sober date now, I would say like the big one for me was in 2017. I quit drinking. That was the last time I drank or like used any harder drugs. But I did have like a little blip and slip up during COVID. I started not just smoking weed, but like edibles became available in Canada. It was so much more easily accessible. So I started using those a lot more. And I also started like throughout that first kind of period, I was also still smoking cigarettes periodically. And that was also really hard to quit. But more recently, so since like this whole long COVID thing has happened, I've really don't use any substance. I don't even like even my diet has changed a lot, like because of the symptoms that like sugar or gluten or dairy give me. I don't really eat those either. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't smoke weed. I don't drink. I don't do anything anymore. And I'm definitely feeling my best mentally, even though physically I'm not as great. It's confusing because in some ways I'm doing so much better. In other ways, maybe you would say I wouldn't, but I also think like I'm also really grateful for this whole experience that I've been going through with long COVID. And I do, in my mind, I can see how it relates to my sobriety as well. But yeah, so that's kind of like the long story short. And looking back, I would say that I'm really proud of myself for doing this. Knowing now like how difficult change is, it's so difficult that I'm so proud that I did it really young because, at that time I was like, oh, I'm not, I don't have a like, it was kind of weird to like say that I had an issue or like I had people that used to laugh at me or be like, oh, come on, like a bit of peer pressure or just like they didn't understand. I also had friends that were really supportive and like were like, no, don't give Kat that, like let her, keep it away from her. And, I'm grateful for them. And I'm even grateful for the people that like, challenged me sometimes with things because it made me more strong in my sobriety. Something at the beginning that what I would do is I would just like, when people would ask me, why aren't you drinking? I would tell them straight up, like, I'm sober, I don't drink. And they'd ask me more questions and I'd always be really, really, really honest. And that actually gave me more power into staying sober. I preferred not to. I don't know if I ever really did just lie about it. I'm sure I did it a couple times just to, not attract attention to me about it. But being honest about it was actually something that has always been really helpful for me. I will share my story and talk to anyone that wants to hear it about it. I think that's why I wanted to record this episode because I think it's really important that, this is talked about and it's heard. I think it's really, really cool now that there's so many more non-alcoholic bottle shops and options in the world. Like in Toronto, there's 2 and one of them looks like it should be a store in Harry Potter. Like it's just so beautiful, the architecture and just the way they merchandise the store is awesome. So it's cool that it's there. I don't drink a ton of non-alcoholic stuff anyways. Like it's just not something I happen to go towards, but I love that it's now emerging so much more. And I'm really looking for the time when there is even more options available in more restaurants, because still sometimes all there is like soda or water. And I'm sorry, I don't want to drink a Coke or a Sprite or something. I don't drink really sugar anymore, so half the time I still do just end up drinking water. But there are some places that now have these alternative beverages that I think are amazing, and I'm so happy that this exists now, because when I was first getting sober, like that, there was like 2 things. There was like Partake, and I'm not a big beer person. There's probably something else, but I honestly don't remember. And now there's literally hundreds of different brands and options that you can get, which I think is so amazing. I'm thinking of other advice that I could share. I think, when I first started exploring sobriety, I had a substance abuse coach substance abuse counselor, because I was under 25, I had this free service through the YMCA, and that was really helpful. I also would go to AA. Later, I went to like group DBT therapy, and I'd done different therapies and modalities over the years, and that has all really helped me in different ways. I think honestly, most recently I've done EMDR and doing doing more like, I guess mindfulness or like things based in neuroscience, and having the ability to understand neuroscience has really, really helped me stay more positive. I would often get trapped up in, I guess, different forms of, I forget what it's called. I guess like extreme thinking, where it's like black or white thinking or catastrophizing. And now I find I do that less. I'm able to ground myself and regulate myself more. I've also started meditating, which has been really helpful. I would like to add though that I used to try and meditate, but I could never get past a couple minutes. Like I wasn't able to do it. And I would actually find that meditation would make me fall deeper into rumination. And so I think that's also important to note that, it can, I guess, swing that way as well. But now I'd say I'm definitely in a more positive mindset more of the time. And overall, like, I feel like I'm more authentically myself and more aligned with me. And I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. I'm really grateful for all that I experienced and what I went through. And looking back, there's points where I could be like, I would have changed this. But at the end of the day, I think things happen for a reason. They happen the way they do. And who's to say that if I had made one change, then another wouldn't lead me in the same direction? I think that's just sort of how my personality seems to function. I kind of do function on these more extremes of, I'm like an all or nothing kind of person. And when I used to drink and party, I would always say like that was like my life goal. Sadly, it was like I just wanted to be the best partier that I could be. And now I think I'm trying to channel that energy into other things, like, for example, my art. So in 2017, after I had this bender, and then I actually shaved my head at the end of that year. It was, like my Britney meltdown moment. And I started to draw. There was a period of time for like a couple of months where I'd go downstairs into my parents' basement where they had a drawing table, and I would draw every day. And some of those drawings are really what has like inspired the paintings now that I've made. And I don't know if completely at that time like it drastically transformed me, but it was able to give me something more grounded and outside of myself. It started to remind me of, my childhood dreams and what I really always wanted to become. In university, I did have art classes and I went in art school, but there was a lot of self-doubt. And it was also, I sometimes wouldn't complete the assignments to, I think, the best of my ability because I was getting caught up in my drinking and substance use. So like art has always been there, but I think it was really powerful me to like step into it and use it as a tool like in my healing process. And that's not to say like it's funny because it's not like you can't make art while you are using substance. A lot of people do. You don't have to be sober to be an artist, but I think it really challenged me, I guess, in different ways that I never would have thought. And now I find it's a place that I can't escape to because that's what substance used to be. That used to be where I would escape to, is like, I just didn't want to be here. I wanted to escape in some way. And now I can escape through my art and I can escape through creativity, which I think is really, really beautiful. And, I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's just a little backstory on my journey. I definitely think I could do more on this topic, but I wanted to keep episode today to like 20 minutes. Because I know the longer episodes can be a bit overwhelming to edit and to like understand at the end of the day. And I want to keep this fun. I want to keep this fun for me. And I think that energy translates to you as the listener as well. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. If you liked it, please give me a follow. You can follow me on Instagram, my personal Instagram, or my podcast Instagram. I'm still figuring that out too, by the way, like what I want to post, where I want to post it, and how it's going to work in that way. Thank you. All right. Talk to you next week.